Welcome, everyone. I'm calling the October 6th City Council meeting to order. Councilmember Joe may arrive late or may not be able to make it tonight, so I just wanted to let everybody know he has an excused absence. As a reminder, we continue to have a remote aspect to our meetings, and both staff and members of the public may be participating in tonight's meeting remotely via WebEx. The next item on the agenda this evening is the Pledge of Allegiance, and I welcome you all to join. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a fabulous audience this evening. I don't think those at home can see the people that are here, but we have several proclamations, and it's just a wonderfully big, full room this evening. We are going to start with ID 1860, Fire Prevention Week Proclamation, and I'm inviting Eastside Fire and Rescue Fire Marshal Mark Lawrence and Chief Ben Lane to the lectern with Councilmember Hall. They're the guys in the uniforms, yes.
Well, I'll just say briefly, good to see you. As the chair of the Eastside Fire and Rescue Board of Directors, it's my honor to give this one tonight, and thank you both for being here with us. Whereas the City of Issaquah is committed to ensuring the safety and security of all those living in and visiting our city, and whereas fire is a serious public safety concern both locally and nationally, and homes are the locations where people are at greatest risk from fire, and whereas home fires caused 2,890 civilian deaths in the United States in 2023, according to the National Fire Protection Association, and a home fire occurs every 93 seconds somewhere in our nation. And whereas smoke alarms sense smoke well before you can, alerting you to danger in the event of fire in which you may have as little as 2 minutes to escape safely. And working smoke alarms cut the risk of dying in reported home fires in half. And whereas Issaquah residents should be sure everyone in the home understands the sounds of the smoke alarms and knows how to respond, and residents who have planned and practiced a home fire escape plan are more prepared and will therefore be more likely to survive a fire. And whereas Eastside Fire and Rescue first responders are dedicated to reducing the occurrence of home fires and home fire injuries through prevention and protection education, and whereas Eastside Fire and Rescue provides all hazard response service to respond to fire, medical, hazardous materials, technical rescue, and emergency service needs to the City of Issaquah, and whereas the City of Issaquah and Eastside Fire and Rescue work together to protect and educate the community regarding fire prevention and safety, now therefore, Mary Lou Pauley, the Mayor of the City of Issaquah, does hereby declare October 5th through 11th, 2025 to be Fire Prevention Week in the City of Issaquah, and we encourage the community to support efforts to prevent fires and be prepared by practicing a home fire escape. We ask the community to join us in thanking Issaquah's public and fire safety servants, Eastside Fire and Rescue. Thank you.
Good evening. Council, Mayor. During Fire Prevention Week, Eastside Fire and Rescue extends our sincere appreciation to the Issaquah City Council for your continued support, unwavering dedication to public safety. Thank you for being steadfast partners in safeguarding our community. Together, we are making Issaquah a safer place to live, work, and visit. Thank you, respectfully.
Thank you. And we'd love to get a photo of you all. Thank you. Thank you very much, Councilmember Hall. The next item under special business is ID 1861, Hindu American Heritage Month Proclamation. And Deputy Council President Barb D. Michelle is going to the lectern to meet up with local members of the Hindu American Foundation, including Praveen Bodke and others in attendance.
Thank you. And it's a real honor to be able to give this proclamation. I've been welcomed to many celebrations in the Hindu community. Hi, Suresh. And always been very welcomed so graciously, so I am really honored to be able to do this. So, proclamation. Whereas Hindu Heritage Month is celebrated every October, which coincides with major Hindu holidays such as Navratri and by the way, feel free to correct my pronunciation. Whereas Hindu Americans in Issaquah represent a variety of ethnic backgrounds, including individuals of Indian, Pakistani, Bangladeshi, Malaysian, Indonesian, Afghani, Nepali, Bhutanese, Sri Lankan, Fijian, Caribbean, and European descent. And whereas there are estimated 1.2 billion Hindus worldwide and approximately 2.5 million Hindu Americans living throughout the United States. And whereas our community has benefited from the many innovations of Hindu Americans, including Ayurvedic, correct? Thank you. Medicine, classical art, dance, music, meditation, yoga, literature, and community services. And whereas we commit to embracing diversity and inclusion by paying tribute to Hindu heritage through education, acknowledgement, and celebration within our community. And whereas the city of Issaquah is proud to recognize the positive influence of Hindu Americans on Issaquah's economic vitality, growth, and well-being. And now, therefore, Mary Lou Polly, Mayor of the City of Issaquah, does hereby proclaim October 2025 to be Hindu American Heritage Month in the City of Issaquah, and urges the community to join in special observance and celebration of Hindu heritage. In witness whereof, she has hereunto set her hand and seal of the City of Issaquah on this 6th day of October 2025. Would you like to speak?
Honorable Mayor Lou Polly, esteemed members of the City Council, distinguished guests, and my fellow residents of Issaquah, Namaste. On behalf of the Hindu American community, it is our sincere honor to accept this proclamation recognizing October as Hindu American Heritage Month. We are profoundly grateful for this official recognition, which not only celebrates our heritage, but also highlights our place as a vital thread in the vibrant tapestry of this city. This proclamation is more than just a piece of paper. It is a powerful statement of inclusion. It validates the experience of generations of Hindu Americans who have made a home here, contributing to our community's growth and prosperity. It tells me that our cultural and religious heritage is respected and valued by our city, and it serves as a beacon of hope for a future defined by understanding and mutual respect. The Hindu community's sustained commitment to service in Issaquah area has been ongoing for more than 8 years. As part of the National Seva Diwali initiative to address food insecurity, the community annually donates food to the Issaquah Food Bank, and in recent years has expanded these efforts to include homeless shelters throughout the Seattle area. This past year, the community further deepened its civic involvement. A Hindu organization was among the participants in the Issaquah Salmon Day Parade. The community also held a Universal Oneness Day celebration to celebrate the Issaquah City Police and first responders. Furthermore, the Guru Vandana program was established to formally recognize the commendable work of teachers within the Issaquah School District. And our Honorable City Council member Barbara attended for the past few years. This year's activities are part of a broader history of volunteerism, which includes Adopt a Road programs, blood donation drives, engagement with seniors through yoga and exercise, and contributions to organizations like the Garage Teen Cafe through volunteer work and board participation. For many of us, the month of October is particularly special, filled with festivals like Navratri and Diwali, which celebrate the triumph of good over evil and knowledge over ignorance. This proclamation adds another meaningful layer to our celebrations, affirming that our city celebrates with us. We are proud to call Issaquah our home, and we appreciate the city's commitment to fostering a diverse and inclusive environment where everyone can thrive. We look forward to continuing our work alongside all of our neighbors to build an even stronger, more connected community for generations to come. Thank you.
That was fantastic. For this picture, we have a lot of folks that we should have come up. And council, if you want to all stand up behind, I'm sure we can fill this up and take a fantastic picture. Great comments.
Let's line up here, and then we'll be behind you. I know.
That's so kind. You're going to have to do a little organizing.
Yep. Scoochin'. Yeah.
That was great. Thank you. Thank you. That was fantastic. I love that you come. Our next special event this evening is, our special business is ID 1863, Substance Abuse Prevention Month Proclamation. And Council President will go to the dais and meet with Influence the Choice Executive Director Marnie Moraldo, plus students from the Tech, or Teens Encouraging Community Health, to the lectern, and I think we have Nyesha Dewan and Ardra Arwin, and do we have any others up there that I missed?
Evie DeFlo?
Okay,
Excellent.
fantastic.
Oh,
Council President.
well, it is lovely to see you all. We very much appreciate all of the contributions that Influence the Choice brings to the community, and then getting students involved in really the advocacy and keeping their community safe is really wonderful. So the proclamation, whereas substance use by young people exists on a spectrum from experimentation to life-threatening overdose. And while many of our youth abstain, a combination of peer pressure, social expectations, family history, environmental factors, and genetics can place some young people at greater risk. And whereas, according to the 2023 Issaquah School District Healthy Youth Survey, 12th graders reported the following rates of past 30-day use, which is considered consistent use. Vaping products, 8%, alcohol, 13%, cannabis, 9%, and combined alcohol and cannabis at 3%. Whereas many of our young people do not develop the skills needed to productively manage adolescent development substance-free, and prevention efforts can strengthen these protective factors. And whereas prevention has a greater long-term impact than later intervention by redirecting early risk into healthy behaviors, educational success, and lifelong productivity. And whereas prevention is also highly cost-effective, research by the National Institute on Drug Abuse demonstrates that every $1 invested in proven prevention programs can save as much as $10 or more in later treatment, health care, and criminal justice costs. And whereas strengthening protective factors such as family engagement, school connectedness, positive peer relationships, and social emotional learning, while reducing risk factors, benefits all youth and contributes to safer, healthier communities. Now therefore does Mary Lou Pauley, Mayor of the City of Issaquah, hereby proclaim the month of October 2025 to be Substance Abuse Prevention Month in the City of Issaquah, and encourage all residents to join in promoting healthy choices for youth, supporting evidence-based prevention efforts, and working together to reduce substance use and its harmful impacts on young people. Thank you. Are you making some comments? Come on up.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ardra Arwin, and I'm a freshman at Skyline High School and a proud and long-standing member of TECH, which is Teens Encouraging Community Health, Influence the Choice, and the city's youth leadership. Thank you to esteemed members of the council, board, and all members here for recognizing October as Substance Youth Prevention Month. This symbolic recognition is so powerful because it reminds us that every statistic is a young person, a family, or a friend whose life can be shaped by the choices they make today. I got involved with prevention efforts just after elementary school, and learning about substance use early on changed how I saw things. Studies from the National Institute on Drug Abuse shows that students involved in prevention programs are 30% less likely to engage in risky behaviors like vaping or drinking. That kind of impact matters. Through my work with TECH, I've seen how prevention empowers students, whether it's peer support, mentoring, or social emotional learning. These tools help us make healthier choices. One student once told me that being a part of a prevention group gave them the courage to say no when they were being pressured by their peers to vape. That moment may seem small, but it changed my life and it definitely changed theirs. Prevention isn't about saying no, but it's about creating stronger and safer communities. It helps students succeed, families communicate better, and schools becoming more supportive places. Of course, challenges are like teen vaping and alcohol use are still real. Personally, I turn to art, music, and outdoor activities like paddleboarding and hiking to deal with that stress. And I'm very lucky to have a strong support system. But not everyone does. And that's why we need to continue to invest in prevention, and listening to young people is so important. So it is my honor and pleasure to receive this proclamation on behalf of TECH, Influence the Choice, and all of our prevention partners. Thank you for shining a light on this issue, as together we can help every student grow up safe, healthy, and most importantly, substance-free. Thank you.
I want to be high on life and not on drugs. This is how we want to wire our younger minds of today. My name is Naisha Devan, and I'm a junior at Issaquah High School. I'm a part of TECH, Teens Encouraging Community Health, under the Issaquah Teen Council. I want to thank you for recognizing Substance Abuse Prevention Month as October. Substance use prevention is something that affects every community, including ours. Many teens turn to vaping, alcohol, or other substances as a way to manage stress, pressure, or emotional pain. That's why prevention isn't only about saying, don't use. It's about addressing what leads young people there in the first place. That's why prevention isn't just about awareness. It's about creating environments where young people feel supported enough to make healthy decisions for themselves. Through TECH, I've learned how important it is to have open and honest conversations. Not judgment, not fear, just real dialogue about what teens are actually facing. When schools, families, and city programs work together, we can all actually change the culture around substance abuse and mental health. There's still a lot of work ahead. More education, more access to resources, more room for creative policies to be enacted into laws, and more support for programs that provide safe spaces for teens to talk. But proclamations like this show that our city is committed to protecting youth and building a healthier future for everyone. Thank you to the council for recognizing this month and for continuing to support prevention efforts in our community.
I think we'll step up and we're gonna take a picture.
And also, just in case folks don't know, Marnie Moraldo is also currently a school board member who is retiring in December, and we appreciate her for all of her service on the school board. And thank you to Suresh for being up here. Thank you, Council President. The next item under special business is ID 1858, Code Enforcement Officer Appreciation Week Proclamation, and I'd like to invite Councilmember Ray to the dais to recognize City of Issaquah Code Enforcement Officer Lori Dunning. And do we have Lori with us on video? Fantastic. So Chris will be talking about Lori as her face floats in the air above him.
I might just make Director Dollywall come up and stand next to me, so I have
Not so
somebody,
lonely.
so I don't get nervous up here all by myself.
That's nice. There's Lori.
There, oh, thank you. Whereas code enforcement officers provide for safety, health, and welfare of citizens in the community throughout the state of Washington through the enforcement of local codes or ordinances dealing with a variety of issues of building, zoning, housing, public nuisance, environmental, health, and life safety. And whereas code enforcement officers have challenging and demanding roles and often do not receive the recognition for their jobs they do in improving the lives and the working conditions for the residents and businesses of the local community. And whereas the role of many code enforcement officers has expanded in recent years with the increased number of foreclosed and blighted properties in communities impacted economically. And whereas code enforcement officers are dedicated, highly qualified professionals who share the goal of preventing neighborhood deterioration, enhancing and ensuring safety, and preserving values through knowledge and application of housing, zoning, and nuisance codes and ordinances. And whereas the Washington Association of Code Enforcement wants to recognize and honor code enforcement officers and professionals all across the state of Washington and bring awareness to the importance of code enforcement to the communities of the state of Washington. Therefore, Mary Lou Pauley, the mayor of the city of Issaquah, does hereby proclaim this week, October 5th through 11th, 2025, to be Code Enforcement Officer Appreciation Week. Thank you, Lori. In the city of Issaquah, and invites the community to join us in thanking Issaquah's Code Enforcement Officer for her outstanding service and contribution to the city. So,
thank you.
Lori, would you like to say something?
I would. Hopefully you can hear me.
We can. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you to Honorable Mary Lou Pauley. We'll miss you in your retirement, and esteemed members of the council. Sorry I can't be there today, but in order to serve the public, I have to get up awful early, so I appreciate your letting me do this from my kitchen. Just to let you know that I appreciate your honoring my profession, which I chose 17 or 18 years ago, and I've served here in Issaquah now for 4 years, and it's been challenging. And I learn something new every day. I face different complaints every day, and I'm happy to serve the residents, the businesses, and the visitors of Issaquah every day. So thank you for this honor.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank
We
you, Lori.
appreciate you.
I'm going to entrust your proclamation to Director Dollywall, so if she doesn't get
She's
it.
trustworthy. She's
You
very trustworthy.
know where to go. So I'm also going to make
I
her take
do.
the picture since you're not here.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very
Thank
much,
you,
Lori.
Lori.
Thank you,
Thank you
Councilmember
all.
Ray. Thanks, Lori. Thank you, Councilmember Ray. The last item under special business this evening is ID 1859, Arts and Humanities Month Proclamation, and Councilmember Zhang is going to go to the podium, and we're inviting up the City of Issaquah Arts Program Administrator, Amy Dukes, and Arts Commission members, Carolyn Thanes, Tina Hayes, and Kimberly Kapestein to the lectern. And ladies, did you bring anybody else? Did I catch you all? All right, thank you for coming.
Thank you all for coming. And before I read the proclamation, I will say I love the newest public art installation out at the Rainier Trail.
Yeah.
Very beautiful. If you haven't been there yet, go check it out. It's really cool. Okay, so now to the proclamation. Whereas the month of October has been recognized as National Arts and Humanities Month for 3 decades by the National Endowment for the Arts, the White House, Congress, and thousands of arts and cultural organizations and communities across the country. And whereas the arts and humanities enhance every aspect of life, improving our economy, enriching our civic life, driving tourism, and exerting a profound positive influence on education. And whereas the arts and humanities help diverse communities explore their history and culture with the support and partnership of local educational and cultural institutions. And whereas the arts are a proven civic engagement tool and can bring people together across difference in challenging times. And whereas educational research shows that the arts help to foster discipline, creativity, imagination, self-expression, and problem-solving skills, while also helping to develop a heightened appreciation of beauty and cross-cultural understanding. And whereas the nation's arts and cultures sector, nonprofit and commercial, represents an over $1 trillion American industry, which is 4.4% of our national GDP and supports 4.85 million American jobs. And whereas Issaquah is home to a vibrant community of arts, culture, and humanities organizations, creative businesses, artists, makers, and creative workers that positively impact our city in immeasurable ways. Now therefore I, Councilmember Kelly Jang, on behalf of Mary Lou Pauley, Mayor of the City of Issaquah, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2025 to be Arts and Humanities Month.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just want to say thanks for having us and acknowledging October as National Arts and Humanities Month. And we hope you will all get out and celebrate the month by taking part in a local arts and culture offering. If you need any ideas, visit Issaquah.com is a great spot to check the calendar. There's so many things happening. So thank you.
Thank you, ladies. Really nice. Thank you, Councilmember Zhang. Thank you, ladies. We're going to take a 2-minute recess just to allow folks who don't want to stay for the meaty part of the meeting the time to leave. But council members, it's not going to be a break time. We're just going to have a quick 2 minutes. Thank you. I just don't want to lose all you guys too. 2 minutes is short. Thank you. Oh, thank you so much. Lovely. Well, it's pretty quiet, so I think I'm going to start up again, if that's okay, City Clerk. The next part of our program this evening is audience comments, and this is when members of the public may address the council, whether you're in person with us tonight or virtually. Those who signed up in advance to make comments will be called upon first, and if you're joining us virtually and would like to make comments, please raise your virtual hand or send the host a chat message. If you're on the phone, that means press *3, and if you've joined by computer, it could be the hand icon. If you're in the room and did not sign up, I will ask for other speakers before closing this portion of the meeting. And City Clerk, has anyone signed up to speak for general audience comments?
Yes.
Thank you. So if you're making comments this evening, you're invited to address the council regarding matters that are directly related to Issaquah's programs, projects, services, or events. Comments related to political campaigns are not permitted. Please direct your comments to the whole council and not individuals, and while this is not a question and answer session, we will contact you to follow up if needed. When you are recognized online, unmute your microphone for virtual attendees. If you're in the room, please step up to the lectern in the center, and there's a button on the base that will turn on the mic, and it will indicate so by being red. State your name and address or relationship to the city. Speak clearly and pause frequently, and limit your comments to 5 minutes. If you're attending virtually and you don't respond after your name or phone number, or your connection is lost, we are going to have to continue with the meeting, and please rejoin if you can. Personal attacks, obscene language, derogatory remarks, and disruptive behavior will not be permitted, and public comments, written and verbal, are an important aspect of the public process, and the city takes your comments seriously. We thank you for taking the time to address us. City Clerk, can you please identify the first person signed up?
Yes, Kleina Dupuis.
Kleina.
Kleina.
Come on up, Kleina.
Good evening. My name is Kleina Dupuis. I live at Providence Point at 3661 224th Place Southeast. I am also president of the Providence Point Umbrella Association. I'm here speaking tonight not only as president of the association, but also as a concerned resident of this beautiful city of Issaquah, surrounded by trees. When we moved to Issaquah 7 years ago from Bellevue, we were delighted to discover that Issaquah residents love trees as much as Bellevue loves trees. Our tree canopies are a valuable asset both environmentally and aesthetically. However, I'm here tonight to share our concerns about fire risk mitigation, not only at Providence Point, but also our entire Issaquah community. Many of our residential neighborhoods are surrounded by poorly maintained wooded areas. The bomb cyclone in December made the consequences of not adequately maintaining our tree canopies quite apparent. There's still ongoing cleanup work from an event that happened almost a year ago. This year, Providence Point worked in conjunction with Rich's Landscaping, A-plus arborists with extensive experience with fire mitigation in California, and Eastside Fire and Rescue to develop a plan to remove underbrush and ladder trees to establish a defensible zone in one of our villages. The day before the goats, part of the removal team, were scheduled to arrive, we were instructed to halt all work. A natural growth protection easement had been identified on the property. The areas were on slopes. Goats can manage slopes, but they eat all plants, including protected ones. If there were an allowance for underbrush to be removed, even by goats, and laddering of trees with selective removal of diseased or dead trees, we would have made a significant move to protect the area from wildfires, potentially saving lives and property. And more likely, the natural growth of plants would have been regrown. Could we agree that a natural protection growth easement in some areas would be minimally impacted for the greater good? There are times when exceptions to the rules make sense. We value our tree canopy and recognize the environmental importance. There are concerns about a plan that alters canopy coverage to a significant extent, replacing healthy mature trees with the ones that would take 20 years to reach the height of 6 feet for canopy cover, 9 feet lower than the current code. That seems counterproductive. Can we not come to a compromise that would protect our safety and allow for a somewhat smaller tree canopy? The city of Issaquah has asked its citizens to serve on various commissions and committees to make decisions that have a significant impact on the safety of our residents and our homes, as well as our environmental concerns. This is a substantial responsibility for them to undertake, which could have long-lasting consequences for our communities. It's now time for the City Council to make the right choice for the future on this issue. We appreciate the Commission and the staff's work. And we support this proposed amendment to the code, which enables not only us, but other areas in Issaquah to consider embarking on fire mitigation plans. Thank you.
Thank you, Kleina. City Clerk, who is next on our list this evening?
Susan Glicksberg, who is with us virtually. Susan, I'm going to make you a panelist now. You should now have the option to unmute and can choose to turn your video on.
We can see you, Susan, but you're still muted.
How's that? Can you hear me?
Perfect.
Yeah, sorry, I'm used to Zoom, not WebEx anymore. My name is Susan Glicksberg, and I live in Montreux. I'm also on the Montreux Homeowners Association board as the Governmental Affairs Chair. And I've been coming to meetings about the tree code. It came to the Environmental Committee meeting, the Planning Committee, and the City Council subcommittee, and have made comments. I do appreciate the changes that have been made to the tree code, specifically the one-to-one. If you take down a tree, you put up another tree. However, I think there's still more work that needs to be done to improve the code. I'm going to make some comments that are my own comments, and then I'm going to try and represent Richard Sears's comments, also on the homeowners board, and hopefully under 5 minutes. So again, I appreciate the work that everybody has done with the public on this, but I still think there are some issues. And one is that there is the tree cover calculated by lot size. Gross lot size, it doesn't seem like a good idea. There is plantable parts of a lot, and then there is unplantable parts. So you could have a lot that has a lot of structure and infrastructure like driveways and patios, and not have a lot of places to plant trees. So I think consideration or reconsideration of that should be done. Also simplifying the tree code. It's really difficult to read through all the sections and figure out what's applicable to a homeowner. If a table could be provided with the tree types, and then whether an arborist report was required or not, whether a permit was required or not, and whether that was a fee permit or not, would be helpful. So it's currently too confusing. Also addressing the permit cost, and we've mentioned this before. Issaquah has the highest permit cost of the area. Richard did a whole sort of survey of up and down the east side, and Issaquah has the highest permit costs for trees. Also address whether replacement trees are required when an owner has a tree fall on their house. There ought to be some sort of exemption or relief provided, because this seems like a pretty extreme case and they're already dealing with a tree in their house. Emergency removal in the code right now, it does allow for removing a tree if it's on a structure, but it says nothing about whether it's blocking a driveway or a road. So maybe expanding the wording on that. And it also says that the emergency removal is for inclement weather events. And I've lived here 28 years, and trees have fallen in non-inclement weather events. They just sometimes fall. So, and if it falls into a house, that should be allowed for emergency removal. Also, I'm going to go ahead and do Richard's. He agrees, again, that the canopy should be calculated as a percent covering plantable area, not gross area. He says it better. There should be general maintenance section where homeowners can see a list of exemptions not requiring an arborist or a permit, like any significant tree within 10 feet of a structure. That is in the nuisance definition, or it should be in the nuisance definition. Any significant dead, diseased, or dying tree, a photo should provide adequate proof. any fallen tree that is down due to natural causes, as this would not cover someone downing a tree on purpose, and exempt from replacement for up to 2 trees per lot. So other areas up and down the east side do allow a lot to take out 2 trees per year. And then the scenarios dealing with new developments should have their own separate requirements. He agreed with me on the table, something to clarify requirements by tree type. And if permit costs were reasonable, like $50 per permit, then you could do something like what's done with the backflow testing, where an arborist would go and clear the permit. And this would also hopefully keep unlicensed operators from doing work in the area. So that's basically our comments. I've also submitted these by email, so that's all I had to say.
Thank you, Susan. City Clerk, has anyone else signed up this evening?
Yes, Marnie Moraldo.
Marnie, come on up.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. My name is Marnie Moraldo. I'm the president of the Issaquah School Board. I couldn't close out my 16 years on the school board without one more chance to come before you to speak about property and zoning. I was recently made aware that by the end of the year, the council may be considering a rezoning of the Bellevue College property in the Issaquah Highlands adjacent to Grand Ridge Elementary School. During your conversations about that, I am hopeful that you will also consider whether the current zoning would be beneficial for other public facilities. Obviously, I'm considering the potential future needs of the district. I know that given our recent reduction in students over the past 5 years, that may seem odd, but I'm also thinking of the needs of the district many years from now. As I consider the changes in zoning that include significant long-term growth throughout Issaquah, there will likely come a time when additional school buildings are needed. I am hopeful that there can be an extension of the current zoning to allow time for the district to evaluate whether a portion or all of this property would be viable for future educational services and warrant continuing its current zoning. So with that part of my comment finished, I would also like to take the time to thank you for your partnerships throughout the years with the district. I have appreciated working with the working relationships that I've developed with you, and I will miss that greatly. So I thank you so much for your service to the community.
Marnie, thank you very much. You will be missed, and we never get tired of hearing you talk about land use and zoning, I promise. City Clerk, has anyone else signed up to speak?
Yeah, we have another virtual participant who'd like to speak, who's on the phone, last 2 digits, 14. I'm gonna make you a panelist now. I believe it's *6 that unmutes you, if you wanna give that a try. And phone-in caller, I'm gonna actually send you a request to unmute.
Oh, that's good.
Okay, the mic is open, go ahead.
Hi, this is Steve Pereira in Old Town Issaquah for about 16 years. Can you hear me okay?
Perfectly, Steve.
Thanks. I'll be somewhat brief. I had 2 items that I'll categorize briefly. First, I'll call political, not to be political or candidate centered. A couple thoughts occur to me. One is that along Front Street and Wood Street, there is a good number of various campaign signs that are put up, which is fine. I hope everybody votes for the candidate of their choosing and participates in policy decisions that their preferred candidates will make. My concern is that I walk past this area fairly regularly and often see a number of these signs down and pulled out and left on the ground. I'm hoping this is just a strange confluence of wind or patterns that are blowing them down and somebody's not taking them out. That would just be bad form in our already current political climate. So I just hope that's not happening. I again hope everybody does vote and be involved in the process. The second related issue I wanted to pass on, I noticed that the Issaquah is hosting a candidate forum for the school board and city council positions coming on Wednesday, October 8th, 2 days from now. I hope people will tune into that and better inform their choices. The next topic is in the recent Issaquah City Council of the whole meeting, and trying to prioritize items for next take up. The brief reference was made to whether or not the city could or would be implementing artificial intelligence. There are really two questions, and not to go too deep down the rabbit hole, I'm not suggesting Skynet or the Matrix will take over. That's a separate question or issue. I think it's a relevant public discussion on whether or not the city and I guess the world wants to look at what the impacts and use will be in deciding whether or not to implement artificial intelligence and artificial general intelligence and artificial supervisory institution intelligence, what that impact has on our own community and our world. So I just think there's a good esoteric chance to have good public discussion on this issue. That includes my comments at present. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And just a note on the campaign signs that you see down in our city, if our landscape crews are working, they place the signs on the ground rather than collect them in order for them to do the maintenance. So that may be a piece of it as well.
They seem to be random, and they don't seem to be in random candidates rendered at random positions. It doesn't seem to be central in any particular area, so I just wanted to point out, but I'll take that in your input as just that and not continue talking, so I'll shut up. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. City Clerk, is anyone else signed up for comments?
No.
I'm looking around the room. We do have a lot of folks here tonight. Could you just raise your hand and indicate whether or not you'd like to come up and provide additional comments? Come on up.
My name is Jay Sternoff. I reside at 22611 Southeast 44th Place in Issaquah, which happens to also be in the Providence Point neighborhood. I've read through the presentation documents today, glanced at them. I don't have a photographic memory, but the total presentation was for tonight's agenda was 132 pages. With that said, the specific one that I'm intrigued with is the Issaquah tree ordinance. And I first have to say that it is, the tree ordinance is a big step towards fire prevention, and I strongly encourage the council to pass it this evening. The only question I have is that when you look at the definition under 18-102-240, it specifically says a typically height of a mature tree should be at least 15 feet. Currently in Issaquah, over the last 5 years, the zoning in the Providence Point area was 25% canopy. It was then raised to 65% in 2023. And then in 2024, it was modified that, and I'll read the section of what was modified, but it changed that 15 feet. Under 18-12812-060, it says the tree canopy target set forth. The tree canopy coverage is measured in the percentage of the canopy, and the existing trees for the rejected canopy coverage to be provided or planted immature trees shall achieve that canopy in 20 years. The second section, which is now C, says the tree canopy, and I'll paraphrase, that was 15 feet for a mature tree has now been reduced to 6 feet. So I guess in conclusion, I'm strongly objecting to those two sections remaining. However, I strongly encourage you to pass this ordinance today and then immediately review those two sections. Because how do I say this? The only thing in common with myself in 20 years is in 20 years, I'm not going to be 6 feet. I'll probably be 6 feet under. Thank you
Jay.
for the opportunity.
Thank you, Jay.
But I wanted to bring that up. Thank
Thanks
you
a
for your
lot.
time.
Looking around the rest of the room, would anyone else like to make some comments this evening? Please raise your hand. Come on up, Connie.
Hey, Connie Marsh, I live on Squawk. So one, you guys have a tax increase tonight that has been through virtually no public process, which the state says you can do. And I'm here to say, should you? Should you really not talk to your community when you have a tax increase? Should you just do it and they won't notice? I don't think it's appropriate if you want to actually represent your community to disregard that they might even care about a tax increase. So, two, if you are going to ill-advisedly do the tax increase without community input, then it should be focused. I think it was proposed at the subcommittee meeting on a specific use. And I would say that that should be capital facilities, because you all are really, really aching to do some work on the police station. This would give you $2.2 million toward that end per year. So there's that. Two, tree canopy. You will have noticed, I sent out a lot of emails on the tree canopy. In the subcommittee meeting, the Environmental Board and PPC were misrepresented in what their positions were. And I said it over and over in emails. So I don't think that the position of the subcommittee was based on true information. So please consider that. Now the fire thing probably should be passed. The changing to zoning from neighborhoods gets us nowhere in particular. So should not be continued. If you decide you want to change the percentages for the neighborhood because you find them super awkward, then I think CPD should come back with those percentages, and you could do that with the neighborhood structure. The other thing that is not working in this code that was entirely unaddressed was that we have not staffed the city to provide the ability for people to plant trees off-site and in their own neighborhood or off-site out of their neighborhood. So when they try to do this, we have no pathway. And so then we seem to jump from, gee, plant a tree on your own property to pay $1,000. And so when I talk to people who are supposed to be trying to figure out where to plant trees, there's just no system to accommodate the community to do that. We have a very tenuous system with our public spaces, but it's totally understaffed. We don't have the capacity to figure out where to plant those trees, how to maintain them, or anything of that nature. So we don't have any support in this code, and that is actually its major flaw. It is not that it's neighborhoods or zoning, right? So I would address that. The last thing is the cost of the permit. If we had a community arborist that was for the community, then when people paid their fee, they would be getting an arborist working for them. Right now, they pay for the arborist, and then the city does a peer review. And so the people are paying for the arborist, they're paying for the permit, they're paying for their tree to be taken down, and for a new tree or 2 or 3 or whatever that is. It's really expensive. And the city, what's the city getting? The city is supposed to be getting a 55% tree canopy, which we want as a goal, but it's totally on the backs of the community to pay for it. I think the community needs to pitch in and help get us our tree canopy at 55% if that is our community goal. So to me, that compromise is to have a community arborist that works for the people. All right, so there's more to say, but I've written it down before. I really don't want you to pass this code as is. Parts of it, but not all of it. Oh, I have 44 seconds. One last bit. So the idea that I heard at the subcommittee is we're going to pass it and then we're going to come back at the beginning of the year and do it again. Now, next thing you're going to ask me for tax dollars. And I'm going to say, how much money are you wasting passing something and then doing it again? We do it for streets, we do it for parks, and now we're going to do it for trees. And I resist. I really do. Don't ask me to pay more money for things when y'all just do it over and over and over again. Thank you.
Thanks, Connie. I'm going to check the room one more time if anyone wants to make public comment tonight and whether anyone else is online. I am not seeing any more hands. I'd like to thank all those who took time to talk tonight about the tree code and various different aspects of it, as well as a potential Bellevue College Development Agreement extension, some general information and comments about downed campaign signs, candidate forms, and AI. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and comments with our council this evening. And just as a reminder, you can always reach your city council at citycouncil@issaquahwa.gov anytime you want to send your comments in. So thank you very much. We're going to move to the consent calendar, and I do not have any remarks on the consent calendar this evening. Are there any committee chairs or chair designates who would like to report on any of the consent calendar items? I am seeing head shakes no. Okay. The consent calendar was distributed to council in advance, and so if authorized, the items on the consent calendar will be considered together and approved by one motion. Have the payables and payroll been reviewed?
They have.
Thank you.
They have.
Thank you. Does any council member desire to remove any item from the consent calendar and consider it under regular business? Not seeing any indication. Could we get a motion?
I move we approve the consent calendar as distributed.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That carries 6-0. We're going to move into the regular business portion of our meeting, which is AB 9051, the first item, public safety sales tax. The council received a presentation on this item at the September 15th City Council meeting and asked questions of staff. The item is now returning for council action, and I'm going to invite Finance Director Kristen Garcia to present this item. Welcome, Kristen.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, members of council, and good evening, members of the public here in the audience and those that may be viewing online. Staff and council have had an opportunity to discuss the option of the public safety sales tax at the July 12th council retreat and again at the September 15th council meeting. So tonight I wanted to provide a brief recap of why we're exploring this option, why we have a need for it, what is the public safety sales tax, and what it can be used for. And I also wanted to follow up and provide information that council had requested at the previous meeting. So at the September meeting, we had talked about some of what's driving the cost increases for public safety. For example, as population increases, the demand on our services also increase. We might need more programs, we might have a need for more officers. The cost of public safety as well as other city services aren't immune to the effects of inflation, so the cost of doing our business continues to increase. We also have unfunded legislative mandates like the reduction of caseloads to public defense. We also want to offer a competitive salary and benefit schedule so we can recruit and retain the most talented staff. And police work is becoming more complex. We have the need for behavioral health, homelessness, and other programs. On top of that, our current revenues are limited. Cities don't have a lot of options to grow new revenue. Our property tax is limited to a 1% cap, and that doesn't keep up with the cost of inflation. And other city revenues like retail sales and B&O tax support other city services. So we have a big demand on our existing revenue. And Issaquah isn't unique to these challenges. Cities do have limited what resources are available to them, and we don't have new revenue options that become available to us very often. So earlier this year, the state legislature passed House Bill 2015 as a new tool for cities to use to help address their funding gaps related to public safety. What the bill does is it allows cities to impose a public safety sales tax through adoption of an ordinance. The sales tax is a 0.1% tax. If imposed, it would increase Issaquah's sales tax rate from 10.3% to 10.4%. It would generate about $2.2 million per year, and the tax has a broad range of uses that can support the public safety and criminal justice systems. It can be used for recruitment and retention of officers, training, public defense, domestic violence services, programs for homeless or behavioral health, or other costs, either directly or indirectly, that support public safety or criminal justice. I do want to make note that there are also grant funds available that can be applied for. That is a separate bucket of money, but for tonight's purposes, I was just focusing on the public safety sales tax option. So that's a recap of the public safety sales tax, what it is, how we can use it, and I do want to address some of the questions that came up from the last council meeting. So the council had asked what some of our neighboring cities were doing. We have Kent that already adopted the ordinance. They are imposing the tax in January. We have Renton, who has done a first reading of the ordinance with the committee and recommending adoption of the ordinance. And then Bellevue, Redmond, Bothell, Kirkland are discussing it. I was also recently at a statewide conference speaking with other cities, not necessarily neighboring to our jurisdiction, but just so you know, cities are actively discussing this option. The other question that came up is how do we intend to use the funds? Administration, and we're continuing to explore how the tax proceeds can best be utilized, but we do have a couple of ideas based on our current needs. We would like to set aside some funding for facilities to address long-term needs and improvements to our current public safety facility. We also want to use some for public defense. We are anticipating some cost increases for public defense, so we'd like to use some of the money for that. We'd also like to use some of the money to support existing costs for fleet, so meaning what the general fund is currently paying for our vehicle replacements. We'd like to use some of the money for that. We'd also like to use some of the money to pay for existing costs for police officers and for retention and recruitment purposes, and then set aside some for capital equipment to support our public safety programs. If the council decides to move forward with adopting the ordinance, the next steps would be to send our eligibility requirement to the Criminal Justice Training Consortium. That portal is now open, so we are able to now submit our eligibility. And then, of course, there's the adoption of the ordinance and submitting that to the Department of Revenue. I would also like to note that the Department of Revenue only accepts sales tax requests 3 times per year, so just in terms of timing, if the council wants the tax to be effective January of 2026, we would need to adopt the ordinance and submit that to the Department of Revenue by October 17th. The next opportunity would be to have the tax effective in April and submittal of the ordinance by January 16th. And administration is recommending adoption of the sales tax ordinance, and that, Mayor, concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Kristen. Does council have any questions at this time? Council President?
Thank you, and thank you, Kristen. I appreciate following up on the questions that we had. You've provided some potential uses of this, but by adopting the sales tax increase at this point, we are not committed to or signing up for those. These are rather good alternatives, good ways that we could utilize that, but it will actually be through our mid-biennium budget process that we will make the decisions of how to use that, correct?
That is correct. Tonight's action would only authorize imposing the tax, and then through our mid-biennium budget process would we make any final determinations on the use of tax. These were just meant as suggestions on what we're seeing for current needs, but we would have further discussion.
Okay. And then I know one of the other questions was, does this go into a dedicated fund or into the general fund?
We would set up a dedicated fund specifically for this tax so we can account for how it's spent.
Yeah, because there are certain limitations on how it can be spent. This can't be just used for anything. This has specific needs and requirements, correct?
That is correct. This is a restricted revenue source, which means state law dictates the specific uses, and we have to follow what state law is. There's also annual reporting requirements, so setting up a dedicated fund to specifically track the uses makes that process a little bit more efficient, and it also is more transparent and accountable.
Thank you.
Additional questions from council? Councilmember Martz.
Was this plan developed in collaboration with the chief's office?
Yes, we've been working in coordination with Chief Swan.
Thank you.
Additional comments or questions? And, sorry, additional questions? Questions? Okay. And this was in, at a COW or at a committee earlier?
It was a committee of the whole, I believe,
Okay, great.
September 15th.
Then Council President, let's do some comments. If it was at a COW, that would be appropriate.
For a motion? Yeah. I move to adopt ordinance number
3113.
enacting an additional sales and use tax of 0.1% for criminal justice purposes as authorized by RCW 82.14.345 and adding a new section 3.04.027 to the Issaquah Municipal Code.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Council discussion. Let's start with Council President.
Yes, thank you for this. Kristen, I really appreciate the way that you laid this out. You have clearly demonstrated the additional costs that we are experiencing in the area of public safety, including state requirements to limit the number of caseload for our public defenders. We also have quite limited financial options for increasing revenue to keep up with our increasing costs from inflation and making sure that we are bringing in the best and the brightest staff members and being able to recruit and retain them. I have heard quite clearly from the community, and we saw during our community survey how important public safety is to our community. And so I am very much in favor of this. I will be very interested to talk with council about the best uses of this fund. I think we clearly have a need for public safety facilities, and I would like to make sure we are utilizing that to the best ability there so that we can reduce the additional ask to the community. But I also clearly understand that we have some of these additional costs that will also need to be addressed. So I just very much appreciate the ability to clearly state why this is a need in our community, and so that the community understands that. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Council President.
So thank you so much. And again, I agree, great presentation. I wanted to speak specifically to the items that are proposed, and as has been mentioned, and I agree that the focus is on facilities, and that's very important. But I wanted to talk to another priority for me, which is the funds for public defense. The most important thing we can do for equitable justice in Issaquah is to provide indigent and low-income people with public defenders. And as we know, public defenders have been underpaid for decades, and this has led to a statewide crisis in the number of public defenders that are available, and the quality of the representation that low-income and indigent people receive if they, in fact, are engaged in the court system. Sometimes for very minor issues that can turn into big things for people. If they're not well defended. So if we are able to make the decision tonight, we would be able then to deliberate knowing that those funds are available. And as the council president said, we will then be, as we go through the budget process, we'll be looking at these things. But it is very important to me that looking at the folks in our community who are least able to afford professional legal advice, being sure that they are provided with public defenders. So I will also be supporting this motion, and I think that the importance to both our facilities, but also the equity that we provide to our citizens is, or excuse me, our residents is really, really important to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Council President. Just want to let you know too that SCA is still, Sound Cities Association is pushing back at the state level. Your comments on making sure people have adequate public defense, 100% support it. The state said they would pay, and because they won't, many cities that have poorer populations will spend more of the 1.1% on public defense than cities that do not have it. And so we have some equity components in application unless the state really steps up. So we're still pushing back, but you're 100% right. They deserve the best representation they can get. Any other council discussion? All right. If there's no, I thought I missed you. Okay, go. Council member Zach.
Thank you. I wasn't sure. Just because I agree with everything that's been said, we've demonstrated the need in this setting quite a bit, and of course the community has told us how important community safety is many times over many community surveys. They've also highlighted cost of living, right, as an important thing, and I think it's just okay for us. It's important for us to acknowledge that tonight, that this is a tough decision as well. Our hands are tied in terms of the tools that we have available to us for revenue, especially as need in public safety and criminal justice continues to balloon. And because we're so tied to these tools, it just makes it a very difficult decision for tonight. So I would just hope that as we continue to put together the mid-buy, as we have a conversation about what the plans are and how we're going to put together spending for this new fund, that we involve community in that as much as we can, so they have a good understanding of exactly what they're getting for what they're paying for. That's all. And I'll support the motion tonight.
Great suggestion. Councilmember Ray?
Thanks. Sorry, I just did my Zach Hall tonight. As Councilmember Hall was speaking, it really did occur to me that one of the things about this particular tax structure, well, A, is it's super regressive. I just want to channel my inner Councilmember Marks. It is a super aggressive tax, but because we are a commercial hub for the region, it also draws revenue from people outside of Issaquah who take advantage of our public safety services when they are in town. So there's an, I won't use the word equity, but there's a matching component here that I like, where those consuming the services are helping to defer some of the costs. So I think this makes sense. I think the need is really clear for public safety, and we hear it all the time. And tonight's really not about what are we going to spend it on. That's for another day to hash that out. But I think the need is really clear, and the funding mechanism is probably as good as we can get given the tax structure in the state of Washington.
I would use the word nexus. I thought that's what I would hear.
Nexus would be great.
Okay, we've almost heard from everybody. Just another opportunity. Councilmember Zhang.
Yeah, I just want to, again, thank Director Garcia for this great presentation, as well as your great presentation in our retreat earlier this year, as well as in the September 15th council meeting. Also want to echo what I've been hearing, from my council colleagues about the fact that the only way that we can raise revenue to pay for public safety is by adding sales tax. It's not great, but because the need is so strong, we don't really have other options. So I will be supporting this tonight. I also really appreciate that we're going to be setting up a dedicated fund and doing reporting on this. And something that I've heard from the community is that, we'd like to see more just like budget transparency in general. So to the extent that we can, have information about, what is this 0.1% sales tax going towards, I think that would be great. And I think it would also be great for us to be doing that for some of these other special 0.1% sales taxes that we've adopted, like the affordable housing sales tax. So look forward to seeing, what types of, public information we're able to provide about this, so that, our residents and folks that shop in Issaquah know where their extra sales tax money is going and can feel like they're getting good value for the tax dollars that they're putting in.
And Councilmember Zhang, are you requesting that maybe during the budget process, as there's a review of a fund, that's the kind of information you'd like to see? That's the time when you would like to see that information?
Yes.
Okay, great, thanks. Is that all? Any more comments? Round twos? Nope. Okay.
The motion before the council is to adopt ordinance number 3113, enacting an additional sales and use tax of 0.1% for criminal justice purposes, as authorized by RCW 82.14.345, and adding a new section 3.04.027 to the Issaquah Municipal Code. And all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That carries unanimously, 6-0. We are going to move on to the next regular business item, which is AB 8989, the Title 18 Tree Code Update. And I'd like to invite Community Planning and Development Director, Minnie Dollywall, to present this item. Welcome, Minnie.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council. Let me quickly share here. So tonight, I'm here to present tree preservation code amendments. And our recommendation is to adopt the proposed ordinance amending Chapter 18102 and 18812 of Issaquah Municipal Code, collectively the tree preservation regulations. In terms of the process, the city did a major overhaul of Title 18 and council adopted it in May of 2023. Since that time, we started implementing some of these regulations, and our commitment was if things come up, that we would not wait a long time, that we would do annual amendments and so on. So you all have touched some of those fixes on an annual basis in 2024 and 2025. However, the tree code amendments were a little bit more on the policy side, which went through the whole more elaborate process with Environmental Board and Planning and Policy Commission. We started this work with Planning and Policy Commission in April, had a couple of meetings with them, a couple of meetings with Environmental Board, or maybe 2 or 3, and then went to the subcommittee, Planning Policy Development Committee, and we are here to present their recommendation. The main policy changes that you see as part of this assortment of amendments for the tree regulations are, there's this methodology of calculating our tree canopy target. So Climate Action Plan has a goal of achieving our canopy target of 55% by 2040. And these regulations sort of implement that goal. We had come up with a methodology to use it by neighborhood, and the data that we had at the time was based on the city's canopy study, which was done for the entire neighborhood. So potential planting area percentage was for a neighborhood, but it was not all developed lots. It was a combination of open space and developed property. So we didn't have good information in terms of the percentage. I think during that update, the request was to go with the potential planning annexation areas. So we've realized that using that percentage at an area-wide and applying that on a lot-by-lot basis was not fair. Because for the smaller lots, we couldn't come up with larger percentages that were required for canopy coverage, so which meant more off-site planting and more fee in lieu of. And it wasn't tied to the impact that was coming up. So for instance, the only time homeowners can remove their trees are if they're hazardous or they're nuisance, so no healthy trees can be removed. But removal of a hazard tree required all the percentage of the canopy percentage to be met. So it wasn't, the impact was a dead tree, a problem tree being taken out, but you had to replant or meet the requirements of that percentage, which was pretty high. So instead, we looked at lot sizes in different neighborhoods. That work happened with the middle housing work, and that attachment is in your packet. The consultant looked at what percentages make sense based on land use and lot size. So that was discussed with both Environmental Board and Planning and Policy Commission, and their recommendation is to do this because it will help the larger percentage. You heard some testimony today in terms of Perhaps the neighborhood method is the way to go, but reduce your percentages. And that's something we can have that conversation at a future broader context after we have more targeted data for canopy coverage. So we are undertaking some of the newer canopy study with King County and working with our urban forester, Dan Hintz, and seeing if we can get data based on a neighborhood, developed areas and non-developed areas, and that's the conversation that'll inform those future conversations. As part of these changes, we've simplified the regulations for removal of hazard and nuisance. Like I said, the replacement is 1-to-1, not what you have to bring up to the entire percentage. We've also clarified that the canopy coverage requirements, those percentages, are triggered with new development or major redevelopment, not if you're doing a tenant improvement and things like that. We've also added some flexibility for tree retention in central Issaquah. So you still have your 25% retention requirements, but you can request, if you meet the criteria, like you have to take trees down because you are required to do frontage improvement or utility lines, or where the clump of trees is, where your building is going to be. Anecdotally, we know that a lot of these trees are probably parking lot trees, so that we would end up preserving, but they wouldn't probably make it. So we're giving some more flexibility, but coupled in with that flexibility is that you still have to replant what you take down, and those don't count towards your 25%. So at least there's not a net loss, and there's an incentive for people to try and preserve those larger trees because you get to count them towards your 25%. So that's the main policy changes that are in front of you today. Quickly, I won't read through all of this, but the feedback from environmental board included not just the regulations piece, but also, should we do more code testing? How are we using the tree fund for? They wanted to have some sort of an approach with a homeowner association that they heard from, maybe one permit for all of the different tracts as opposed to one permit per tract kind of a thing. And so those are all implementation things that we will fold their feedback into how we implement tree regulations. They also talked about public education and more simple regulations for single family requirements. They were for the Central Issaquah flexibility requirements and such. Planning and Policy Commission, some of the highlights were they were wanted us to add a category where the lots were less than 5,000 square feet, because some of our lots are smaller, and so we added that. They talked about tree giveaway program, so a plug-in for any community members that may be listening. That is coming up. There is a website that you can sign up for. You need to sign up online and then pick up your trees at Pickering Barn. And about 275 trees will be given away free by our wonderful Parks Department. The other feedback was wildfire code updates. You heard some of that testimony today. There is a provision that allows some of the removal for for wildfire risk, but more work on that is needed because the wildland urban interface code that the state is working on, those maps are coming out next year, by next summer is what they tell us. And so we had briefed council on the wildland urban interface codes with Jared, emergency management, and the building official. So more conversations will occur on wildfire risk assessment once those maps come out. What they mean, particularly for a city like Issaquah, where you have overlapping requirements for critical areas, you may be in a stream buffer and you may be on a steep slope and such. So those provisions will be discussed in the future. The environmental board feedback, we got their input on 5 policy questions. Their detailed feedback is included in the letter that is also in your packet. You heard some testimony today about misrepresentation. So I do have a slide in here once we get to the policy question about what the feedback we received from environmental board and planning and policy commission. There were about 8 questions we posed to them, but we also got feedback beyond these questions. The first one was, should the city waive the requirement for 1-to-1 tree replacement if it's a pretty treed lot and the site meets or exceeds the canopy target. This is where I think I'd like to clarify. So both Planning and Policy Commission and Environmental Board recommended 1-to-1 replacement because that fixes the problem people were having by taking one tree down, you had to plant 10. That wasn't commensurate with the impact of what people were recommending. Environmental Board discussed this topic. In the end, they did say, just keep it simple and keep it 1-to-1 replacement, regardless of how many trees a property owner has on their property. Planning and Policy Commission recommended what is in your packet at this point, which was 1-to-1 replacement. However, if a property currently meets or exceeds their canopy coverage, that you can go through that process and show how you have a treed lot and you are meeting your percentage, therefore you do not need to replant.
So Minnie, I'm just going to check in with Councilmember Martz. Do you want to ask something on this policy question number 1?
I want to ask something about what she's talking about.
Great. Go ahead.
Yeah. So have we looked at, all the stuff you're talking about is really sort of at the margins where people are attempting to be in compliance with our code and the options in front of them. Did we look at all penalties for non-compliance? Because I live on Squawk, and I love living on Squawk, and we're very proud of our canopy on Squawk. We have 5,000 people, and they're more or less hidden underneath a deep canopy. But we've had a number of instances in the last few years where people have just torn out a whole bunch of historically significant trees. And the penalties that they got, I'm pretty sure, are less than the value of the increase in their home that resulted from the increased view that they got from tearing out all those beautiful trees. So did we look at all at penalties for just gross non-compliance?
Yeah, so we will be talking about fees on November 10th with you, because some of the testimony today was the expense of the permit and all that kind of stuff. For removal of illegally cutting down trees, currently the fees are double the amount of fees for your tree permit, but the intent there is also to get compliance from them. So then you look at what the impact is. If they took down 2 trees that they shouldn't have taken down, then they have to replant those trees. So we didn't have a big discussion about whether that the monetary penalties for that versus getting them into compliance for planting those trees, or both.
But you understand the concern.
Yeah.
If somebody increases the value of their property by $200,000 by taking out essentially a grove of trees, and we charge them $70,000 or $80,000, I think is what happened in the one case on Squawk, like that's a financially advantageous position for them to take, non-compliance, breaking the law.
Yeah.
As it's currently written.
Yeah, during this update, there wasn't a big focus on that element.
Given that has happened in recent years, several times on Squawk, it seems a real concern. It's not a sort of a what if concern. It's happened in recent years, and it seemed an economic decision to improve lots.
So I think what you're hearing is that it's not in your package tonight, but as Minnie had said, there is ongoing work on the code. And so it sounds like this is something you'd like to discuss with the rest of the council about it.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilmember Zhang?
So I just pulled up our tree code, Issaquah.municipal.codes, 18.812.160, violation and enforcement. In the civil penalties, there is a section that says the extent of the penalty must be determined according to one or more of the following. 1B seems the one that's capital B, point 1, point lowercase b, is the economic benefit that the violator derives from the violation as measured by the greater of the resulting increase in market value of the property or the value received by the violator or savings of construction costs realized by the violator performing any act in violation of this chapter. So it seems like we do have in our code basically saying you can hit them with the civil penalty equal to the increase in property value. I think it's more of a question of enforcement.
Wow, you're into code. I think that's great, and I think Councilmember Mertz's concern goes to a couple of recent incidents, and so I think there's probably a follow-up discussion you'd all like to have about that. Are there any questions on policy question 1, or should we have Director Dolly Wall keep going? Okay, Director.
So the next one was, this is the biggest change, so going from a neighborhood potential planting areas to average lot size and zoning type, and establishing a percentage for those. So here's sort of a case study in Tallis where the lot sizes range from about 2,000 to 3,000. Under the old method, the required canopy was 73% because it took into consideration all your open spaces and protected NGPE areas. But on a lot by lot basis, those were hard to meet. And under the new method, the canopy coverage for each lot is 25%. Most lots can meet this, and if they can't, there's a fee in lieu or planting offsite options available. For Old Town, the canopy coverage under the old method was 33% because there aren't protected open spaces and things like that. So that was pretty close. Under the new method, it just goes up by 2%, so 35% is the option here for a 9,600 square foot lot. The applicability section, I talked about that briefly. In the current code, anytime you touched a tree, any kind of tree, you had to meet the percentage. Under the proposed amendments, only for new development and redevelopment, or if you want to get a pass from replanting, you can go through that exercise of showing that you meet the percentage. If you're taking a dead, dying, or diseased, or, hazardous tree or a nuisance tree. The replacement ratios, hazard or nuisance is 1-to-1, landmark trees, which are larger trees, is 1-to-2 replacement. Central Issaquah flexibility is, again, this is where the city's most designated growth is, but a lot of trees are parking lot trees. But if you can show that it's needed for and you meet this criteria, A through F, then you can be approved of this deviation to plant on, and then you'll have the option, if you do take down, you can't preserve 25% of the diameter of the trees, then for every 6-inch of diameter removed, you need to plant 1 tree, in addition to meeting your 25% requirement. So here's an actual project that Development Commission recently approved. There's a stream on one corner here. Most of the trees outside of the stream buffer were difficult because this is getting torn down and rebuilt into townhomes. Having some more flexibility that provides some of those frontage improvements, but still meeting the canopy coverage goals is sort of the intent with these edits. Wildfire mitigation, we consulted with Eastside Fire and Rescue. They used the National Fire Protection Association's standards. Wildland Urban Interface guidance is still under development by Department of Natural Resources, so we will have to revisit this once that is out. One of the comments we received from the fire department was perhaps we could use anyone who uses this NFPA standard. But I think what we said, we trust that if EFR is using this NFPA, there's going to be more balanced approach versus opening it up. And we may need to revisit that when we get some more guidance on that. Understanding that this may result in some canopy, which is less than the targets, but it is a permitted use to take it down, except for if you have critical areas that exemption, that allowance doesn't apply to you. Planning and Policy Commission deliberated and passed it on to Council for adoption. They gave us some things that they wanted us to present to you. That there is some language that supports that down trees do not require an arborist report, that we do explain the Central Issaquah flexibility. Also, homeowner association permitting is examined, so that's a more of an implementation piece, which we are ready to do. They also wanted to clarify the interplay between critical area code and tree code, and that some of those exemptions don't apply, so the language was added in there. There was some awkward language about 1-to-1 replacement, no more than, and this, that, so we've clarified that. They also got comments from the tribes who said that there are these culturally protected trees, and so Dan Hintz and I met with the tribes. We presented, unfortunately, they're at that point, they don't have an inventory that they want to publish, that here are all the culturally modified trees, but there's more of an educational piece. The city has a heritage tree program. Those can be nominated and go through that nomination process, but we did add a definition of a culturally modified tree, and so that's in the code, which is similar to what we have in our urban forestry program, urban forestry plan. So planning and development.
Minnie, if you want to go back to that slide, Councilmember Marks?
I hope it's buried in here. Why are we still protecting cottonwoods? I thought we had a plan to get rid of cottonwoods in the city. I see cottonwoods are in the system of prioritization of trees. I thought cottonwoods we're getting rid of those as a city.
I will have to look into that. My understanding is, it's also where they are. So if they are next to a stream, they're probably shading the stream. So then it's still a significant. You're looking at the code language?
Yes.
Okay, I can look through that and get back to you.
Yeah, I remember a few years ago we decided cottonwoods were nuisance trees, and this doesn't seem to make any specification for where they're located, just their existence.
Yeah, so when we did the whole tree code update in 2023, we created a city's preferred tree list and updated it with graphics and all that. It's not embedded in the code, so it's a living document. And as we have learned more through this urban forestry position that was funded through, that's something that Environmental Board actually made the recommendation. Council, thank you for, providing funding for that position. That has developed, that program has developed. And so that list we got through, and that can be amended and kept up without council action, because climate change is happening. A lot is being, adaptability of some of these drought tolerant trees and such can occur. So there's a lot of learning going on about which trees make sense and which don't, given some of those changes here. But
Okay.
I'll look into the cottonwood part.
Thanks. I mean, this body has and I'm going to say it was a few years ago, and then somebody's going to tell me it was 15 years ago. But this body has at some point said we want to get rid of cottonwoods. They don't serve any purpose for the city.
Native. They are native. Serve a purpose.
Thanks.
Okay, Minnie, if you want to move to your next slide.
So Planning, Development, and Environment Committee met on September 9th. They recommended adoption of the proposed amendments with a request to revisit this topic for a broader discussion. And so we are here today, and our recommendation is to adopt these changes.
Thank you, and I'm going to move it over to Councilmember Hall, Chair of the Planning, Development, and Environment Committee, and ask if you want to summarize the committee's recommendation on this item.
Yeah, sure. I presented this a little bit at our last council meeting too, but just a reminder that these things came up through code users, through residents interacting with the code, and were then identified with staff, and then went through this process, which we're thankful for. As just part of the Title 18 overhaul, people interacting with the code, but also the bomb cyclone. So lots of learning in these places. As a reminder, we had a really long meeting about this in committee in search of something that could be very simple and easy to use from a code user's perspective, but also we started to find ourselves getting into a rebalancing conversation about where should it sit between our ICAP goals and our tree canopy, and not being overly burdensome on residents, and how do we define that. And we thought, okay, this is a really deep conversation, harkens back to even the chart that we did on goals and outcomes for the Title 18 overhaul. So we clearly need to address what staff and our boards and commissions have identified as areas of need in community, while also acknowledging that there's a lot of work to come, and we need to get specific about that and define how we go about doing that in the new year. So that's what you see tonight, is some updates to, and also I should just say too, that would not be redoing what we've just done. It would be doing something different, something very different. So, again, a much more larger conversation to come, and I think that's everything that we talked about in committee, unless any of the committee members wanted to add anything else.
Councilmember Chang.
Yeah, I think one of the things that came up in the committee was that, you know, kind of the original reason why we're talking about tree code right now is because, you know, a lot more residents were using the tree code in the aftermath of the bomb cyclone. And so that was kind of the origin of needing to come back and say, okay, you know, we adopted this tree code, it's not completely working, and we need to have some fixes so that folks can, you know, remove trees that fell on their home or things like that. And so I think this update to the tree code accomplishes those original objectives of making sure that folks have the flexibility they need to, you know, clean up from the bomb cyclone. We're now almost a year out from that, so I think we really do need to pass this to give folks the flexibility. But also I think, you know, moving forward, figuring out what do we want the tree code to be long-term in terms of, you know, do we want the tree canopy requirements to be by neighborhood versus by zoning is kind of an open question. You know, what are the goals of having this tree code? We've talked a lot about how we want it to be, you know, something that is simple for users to use or just easy to understand so that people can follow the rules. Whereas in the, you know, code itself, the 7 objectives listed, numbers 1 through 6 are basically, we want to keep as many trees as possible, and number 7 is we want to, you know, protect public safety. And so I think as we revisit, as we look forward to, you know, having a deeper look at the tree code in general, I think the first step really is going to have to be defining what are the objectives, what do we want the tree code to do? And then from there, figuring out what the updates are. I think this update was a bit more, I mean, by nature, it had to be more reactive to what we were hearing from the community. And then through this process, we heard a lot more from the community about, you know, different issues with the tree code and how it affects everything from, you know, goats to redevelopment. And so I think, you know, I think we need to pass these updates right now just to give folks the flexibility, but we also do need to have a much deeper discussion next year.
That is great. Thank you both for touching on the fact that you are trying to accomplish many things where plans actually are not in agreement and may not be in agreement, and you're going to have to find that compromise place for it. So that's a tough challenge always for council. Thank you for that report out. Let's go to council questions. Councilmember Ray.
Trying to figure out how to ask this in a really concrete way. How do we maintain the tree canopy if I don't have to replace a tree that I cut down with something that's of the same size and canopy for 20 years? I'm just trying to figure, you know, are we going to go and just kind of draw down on the existing canopy over time because we're replacing mature big trees with small little trees with little canopies?
Yeah, so, you know, I mean, the tree canopy study is a good benchmark for studying where we are in relationship. How do we achieve our goal of 55%? It's going to happen with regulations. It's going to happen with Green Issaquah team that, you know, keeps track of how many wonderful trees that they planted, to the funding that you know, and the programs that council funds, and like tree giveaway programs and such. So keeping up that tree canopy will occur through programs, funding, and regulation. So it'll take all 3 to kind of get us to our 55%. Yes, there can be temporary loss of a big tree being taken out, but those trees get removed with development and redevelopment. Single-family homeowners or, you know, people on their lot, the only time you can take down a tree is if it's dead, it's a nuisance, or a hazard tree. So you can't take down a healthy tree. But I see what you're saying, that if we don't have a one-to-one replacement, then potential.
Yeah, and even if you do have a one-to-one, you're replacing a big one with a little one.
Temporarily,
And
yes.
so you've got a big timing gap where we're going to start to see a decline. And that's why I asked you the question about, you know, why is it that we are, you know, you don't even have to do one-to-one if you're hitting the canopy on your parcel or on that lot, because at least that way we're kind of hedging that we are oversubscribing in this lot, and that makes up for where we're undersubscribed. But my only concern is that we're gonna find ourselves on the wrong trajectory in terms of tree canopy. And I wanna say in the short term, but I think it's probably, if this is what we do, it's probably in the forever term, because it'll just keep cycling. So I'd love to hear from my colleagues too, because I know you guys have spent tons of time talking about it, and I've only read you know, the red line, so I'd really be curious.
Councilmember Zhang, followed by Council President.
Yeah, I think the whole thing with trees, because I've thought about it a lot since, you know, we had our committee meeting, is that they really are, you know, a form of public infrastructure in terms of, you know, the services that they provide in terms of stormwater, you know, preventing landslides and things like that. And I think, you know, as a city, we are responsible for infrastructure, and so we can do things like, you know, plant trees on city-owned right-of-ways. And I think historically, a lot of cities have kind of had this idea, it's like, oh, trees are infrastructure, and if you just happen to have trees on your land, then it is public infrastructure, and we're not going to do anything to help you with that. And if it, you know, falls on your house, then you also have to replace it, and we're going to make you pay for it 3 times. And so I think, you know, kind of having that perspective that it is infrastructure for the common good, and we need to figure out how to support that. You know, for folks that have trees on their lot, if they can replant it on their lot, that's great. And you know, if we want more trees in the city, then we need to figure out where's the right place to put them. For example, in city right-of-ways and city parks. Potentially sometimes, you know, there's areas on private lots where it might make sense to do that. But I do think that it is something where it is, you know, public infrastructure, and we as a city need to kind of treat it as such, instead of necessarily assuming that, you know, just because you have a tree that's already been there for a long time. Like, for example, if you have a cottonwood tree that's been there for a long time, if it just suddenly breaks, then, you know, should it be your responsibility to plant a different species of tree that's going to be as big as cottonwood tree was going to be in 20 years, knowing that cottonwood trees grow massively and also are structurally unsound? I think, you know, just figuring out what the right balance is of, you know, city investing in that infrastructure versus, you know, pushing that responsibility onto private residents is really important.
Also, Councilmember Ray, in this city, I cannot believe you are not going to be measuring repeatedly where you are. So hopefully we never get to that scenario of only in the decline of percentage. Council President?
Thank you, and I'll reply to that idea when we're in conversation mode, but going on questions, can you talk to me a little bit more about wildfire risk? Because obviously there is concern about, you know, tree canopy and keeping up our canopy, but there's also a concept of healthy forests versus just number of trees, and that wildland urban interface and the influence it has on risk on households. So where are we on that? Is there anything that we are doing that is negating the ability of HOAs and homeowners to protect their properties? Where does that sit?
Yeah, so the concept of wildland urban interface is 2 parts. So there's also the structure hardening pieces. So, you know, what kind of mold? A lot of these embers fall on the roof. What kind of Class A construction do you have on the wood on your roof? Do you have those bird blocks that you can, you know, light up your insulation? You know, can you have a different type of a construction for that purposes? A lot of it is understory brush. So if you can keep 5 feet clear from your structure, that goes a long way. So a lot of this stuff is being discussed and, you know, learned by other cities that are dealing with it, or other regions that have been dealing with wildfires longer than Pacific Northwest. But also wildfire risk in Eastern Washington versus Western Washington is slightly different, and that's where Department of Natural Resources is really coming up with. The health of the forest land, you know, is also important, but how much is clearing of, you know, how much room do you need to clear around your homes to safely protect you from the wildfire is still a question mark in this region until we learn more through this Department of Natural Resources study. So we don't know it all at this point. We are watching what kind of, you know, maps come out. We've also learned that, like in Oregon, when those maps came out, insurances got dropped for homeowners. And so, you know, that's also something to watch out for because that doesn't help anyone. So there's different layers of complexity that comes with wildfire risk protection. And we'll have many conversations with council and emergency management as we learn more about that. But as far as street regulations go, you know, there's also science around what type of trees are more fire resistant, and will that adaptation happen with climate change over time, and can that be started quickly so that the kind of vegetation that you plant doesn't burn that quickly. So a lot more to come around that. For this go round, we've allowed, you know, if East Side Fire and Rescue goes and does these assessments on a parcel by parcel basis, and they're not saying clear cut everything around you, but they're making those kind of, you know, don't put any dead wood around your structure, close this out, those kind of common sense things that they're requiring. But like if there's branches overhanging your roof, they're asking those pruning. So in a limited way, that's what this code allows folks to do.
Okay, so I'm trying to understand, is there anything in our code that limits a homeowner or property owner's ability to have wildfire risk, like mitigate their risk? Do you know?
Our existing code didn't have anything, so there's a provision that we added in here saying if you get this assessment from East Side Fire and Rescue, then you qualify for tree removal.
Okay, so we consider that a pathway that increases their ability to mitigate risk.
Correct, but where it gets complicated is you have critical areas. So the test under the critical area code is the state law of no net loss, but you know, so you have to be careful. So that's not fixed with the tree code. That'll come after the wildland urban interface.
And native
guidance
growth
comes.
protection easements.
Correct.
Which we have a lot of.
Yes.
Yeah. So our understanding is the next step for that is really working with the state and the wildland urban interface.
For
So,
best management practices, yes.
Thank you.
Councilmember Mertz.
I mean, the problem with all that, as a homeowner's home, whose home is adjoined to a 5,000 acre open space, is that anything more than 20% is critical slope. And you can't and shouldn't take those out. Your risk from slide on Squack Mountain is far higher if you were to put a 100-foot buffer around your home. You've got a lot more risk from slide than you ever would that you're gonna get hit with a wildland fire. I mean, the challenge for the areas of the city that are really, I mean, this valley is not at risk from a wildland interface fire. It's Squack Mountain, it's Cougar, it's you know, the edge of the plateau, and all those places have critical slope, right? So we're severely limited in our ability to respond to wildland urban interface fires. And the folks on Squack, the strategy is to just get off the mountain if there's a fire.
Additional questions? I am not seeing any questions. Chairman Hall, would you like to make a motion? You have a motion in front of you. I can hand it to you. Got it.
Thanks. I move to adopt ordinance number
3114.
amending chapter 18.102 definitions and 18.1 or 18.812 tree preservation of the Issaquah Municipal Code.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Let's go to council discussion. Council President?
Thank you. So this is a really complex one. This is something that we did have a long conversation in the Planning, Development, and Environment Committee. It also went through the Environment Board and the Planning Commission. It had a lot of feedback from residents. And I think where we have come to is these are necessary changes for several reasons, including our ability to continue to respond to the bomb cyclone, but we have not hit this out of the park. The idea, and I especially appreciate the resident who came in and showed here's what it looks like for all of these other cities. Here's what the costs are. Here's, you know, the simple form that they have on their website that shows you whether or not you need a permit or what your ability is. The way that we have created this code does not make it easy for people to comply. And I think that puts us at a disadvantage. It means that we are not providing the customer service to our community. So I look forward to a future time when we can really dig into this and like Councilmember Hall said, talk about our goals and outcomes chart, you know, because there are several areas of trade-off. There are things of, you know, if you're requiring somebody to keep every single tree, even if it's a parking lot tree, that limits the ability for a plot of land to be redeveloped and provide lower cost housing. There is the wildfire mitigation risk. There's the idea of, do we want to keep every tree? Are we just going for canopy, or do we want a healthy forest that can survive and thrive and has less wildfire risk? So I think there are a lot of conversations that need to occur. But at this point, it's really, really important to recognize that our previous code said that any tree that got removed, whether or not it was a hazard tree or whatnot, had to have this big canopy coverage replacement that often made that absolutely impossible on some of these lots. And so this, we are saying, A, it only needs to be applied when there is 50% plus redevelopment. You can do a one-to-one tree replacement, and it provides some adjustments for the areas of the central Issaquah area, which I think are really important for recognizing what those trees in those parking lots currently look like. I think there are still some areas to talk about here, but I'm pleased that we have made this progress. I'd like to look at in the future, how do we avoid having something go through so many areas, so many commissions without an understanding of some of the other problems that the community has faced. But I also understand that we needed to make this flow through for the benefit of residents. So I will be supporting this. Thank you.
Any comments? Councilmember Hall.
I've already spoke a little bit, and I agree with what's been said, so I'll keep it brief. I just wanted to say, although we're talking about like what a reimagined tree code might look like and things to do in the future, staff did exactly what they were supposed to do here. Like the charter for them was listen to what communities' problems were and then come up with ways to adjust the code and have solutions to those specific problems. That is completely different from us saying, we really need to talk about simplicity and all that. So anyone on staff that touched these codes updates, met with community, I know you met with several members of out in community as well. Just a deep thank you from the committee, from the full council for doing all that work.
Councilmember Zhang.
Yeah, as I've mentioned before, I'll be supporting this tonight. I think just zooming out from, you know, the specific aspects of tree code to, you know, how are we going to achieve our tree canopy? I think there's one aspect of it that is like, you know, how do we make sure people aren't just cutting down trees willy-nilly, which is part of the tree code. But there's also the how do we invest in growing our tree canopy and getting more trees, and also, you know, preserving the existing trees that we have. For example, there's a lot of trees in right-of-ways that have invasive ivy growing on them. You know, should we be doing green Issaquah programs to maintain those trees that we have, which are public infrastructure? So I look forward to, you know, adding that aspect to the discussion, because I think, you know, the tree code is one aspect of it, but then also the how do we invest in making sure our trees are healthy and getting more of our trees that are also healthy is also a key part of our conversation. And I think, you know, over-indexing on we don't want to cut down any trees while ignoring, you know, while putting less emphasis on, or I guess we want to balance that with emphasis on we want to make sure that we have the trees that we need, that these trees are healthy, and that's going to come through things other than just the tree code.
Additional comments? Discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion on the table. Adopt ordinance number 3114, amending chapter 18.102, definitions, and 18.812, tree preservation of the Issaquah Municipal Code. And all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? And that carries 6-0. Minnie, I just want to thank you, team, just not only for the excellent work you did on the entire Title 18 project, but your commitment to going through this list of additional items and to be able to pivot like you could after a bomb cyclone to take on a community issue like this and address what you were asked. I think it's always an opportunity, and we always learn that we want to have more conversation about other things, but you did hit it out of the park. Your team did what they were asked with the resources you had. You did a great job. But I think there's a lot of information that came up tonight that told us and informed us what the next conversation is going to look like. So thank you very much. Okay, at this point in time, we are going to move to committee and regional reports. And we'll start with Councilmember Zhang.
Great. I have one report from the K4C Electeds Committee. So we met last Friday, October 3rd. This is a smaller group than the full K4C elected group. We had some great discussions about the Climate Commitment Act. So Councilmember Neil Black from Kirkland reported that he attended a business forum where the Climate Commitment Act was a huge topic of discussion. And basically, you know, there's a lot of skepticism from the business community about the value that we are getting for these tax dollars. And so, you know, I think one way that cities can potentially come to the table is by actually advocating for, you know, making sure that the investments we're making are actually getting the best value for our money. Because there is, you know, the voters have said by like a 30-point margin that this is something that we want to do, but we do need to make sure that, you know, with this $1 billion a year, we're actually getting the best value for the money. And so, you know, pushing for more transparent and data-driven allocations of this money, making sure we're getting good value in terms of, you know, carbon abated per dollar invested. Those are the types of things that I think, you know, as cities, we should be looking for our state to be doing. So more to come on that, but it was a great discussion because I think, you know, that kind of just came up and we chatted about that. There's also going to be a K4C working session, I believe, in the King County offices on October, I think 20. Okay, it's later in October. There's going to be a bigger, you know, work session for city council members across King County to talk about you know, some of the different climate work that we're doing. So I will be attending that as well.
Councilmember Zhang, if you could check in with me, Sound Cities Association is also requesting for additional data for transparency for the Climate Commitment Act funding in terms of different graphics showing where the most polluted areas are and whether or not the funding is being spent in those neighborhoods that are most impacted. So since I don't go to K4C and you do, I would like to connect with you and make sure if we're going to make an ask of the state legislature that we put them together.
Yes, definitely would be happy to do that. And I've also personally read through the reports from Department of Ecology, and I think they have a lot of room to improve.
Yes, they do. Okay, Councilmember Joe has an excused absence this evening, and we're going to go to Councilmember Hall.
Believe it or not, no report this evening. Yeah.
Wow. We will move to Councilmember Ray.
No report.
Wow. Councilmember Martz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Council Services, Safety and Parks Committee met on Tuesday, September 30th. First thing we looked at was water leak adjustment policy. We recommended to add the ordinance as presented to the consent calendar of the October 20th City Council meeting. We felt that the proposed policy seemed reasonable and fair. It was presented in the context of, basically it allowed a one-time, a standard policy of having a one-time adjustment. The amounts involved seemed reasonable. It was compared against other municipalities, so we're not an outlier in being particularly generous on this. Proposed policy requires customers to pay for the water used and associated infrastructure maintenance costs, just not at the regular water conservation rates. That's how the adjustment works. So we recommended bringing that back on consent. Then we had a briefing on e-bikes from Chief Schwan. And basically, we recommended to add this to the October 28th Services, Safety, and Parks Committee meeting to review a draft ordinance that would be prepared and presented by staff based on feedback. So our feedback was that police officers need to be supported and have the tools and training needed for enforcement of our e-bike policy. This is a safety issue. There was support for public education opportunities in addition to enforcement options for the IPD. We also said we'd like to see support be added for our legislative priority list and advocate for state legislative action. Then there was an open question about whether the city should create its own rules or wait for state legislative action. I think we definitely want to put in place enforcement mechanisms for existing legislation, but I think there's a hope that the state will take more action because there's just this legislative hole into which e-bikes fit, and that's causing a public safety issue. And then the Sound Cities Sound Cities Association Public Issues Committee is coming up this Wednesday, October 8th. We are going to review for action a letter on indigent defense caseload standards to the legislature. I just want to highlight one paragraph, Kelly, out of our letter, which is, in right to counsel services in the 50 states, the Sixth Amendment Center notes that Washington State is one of only 8 states that require local governments to provide a majority of the funding needed to support indigent defense services at the local level. The paper also outlines that state funding, as opposed to local funding of indigent defense services, is proven to be the most stable and equitable source of funding. Hopefully our state legislators will make of that what they will. And then the other item is going to be For Culture Doors Open presentation. So when the King County Council passed the For Culture levy, the Regional Policy Council stipulated in the ordinance that For Culture was required to have a communication plan to jurisdictions regarding the use of the levy funds. For Culture's presentation to the PIC is the first step in that plan to provide some basic context and begin engaging PIC in a discussion of how For Cultures and Sound Cities should communicate going forward. This is also, I will just say editorially, PIC getting back on track to representing value for our city. That
great.
Concludes my report.
Deputy Council President?
I have no report tonight. Thank you.
Wow. Council President?
Thank you. I had 2 meetings on October the 2nd. The Puget Sound Regional Council's Growth Management Policy Board. Agenda included, we saw cities and county, within the county working together to create pre-approved ADU plans. All of the cities came together and it cost them $10,000 to $20,000 to create these architectural plans of ADUs that fit every single one of their cities' codes. And so they've just adopted that and then also talked about ways to maintain it. I thought it was a really interesting idea. We took a look at our potential state legislative agenda. We had a report on the regional centers monitoring. So as you know, we have a regional center in the Central Issaquah plan, and ours is not accommodating the amount of growth in housing or jobs that it was intended for. And so they're trying to understand, how do we work with this when some of the regional centers are exceeding the capacity and others have not gotten to that point. I made several comments about, hey, we haven't actually gotten the transit that would support that.
Light rail?
Yep. So encourage them to allow for circumstances such as that rather than changing. But another alternative they had proposed for some of the centers that are not yet meeting those targets was potentially county centers. So it's a continuing conversation. They just wanted to get some of our feedback on that as they continue thinking through what the regional centers look like. And then there is also a proposal out there to change the board membership for GMPB. Right now, SCA, the Sound Cities Association, appoints, I want to say something like 6 seats. And there are only a few cities within King County that have dedicated seats. And the proposal on board is basically to take any city that has over 80,000 population within this several county area and give them dedicated seats. And so for King County, that would reduce the other city appointment to only one. So you would end up with Bellevue and Redmond and Kent and Auburn and all of those having their own dedicated seats on this. So considering this is a regional council and the Growth Management Policy Board, so that is one policy that is out there. I would be happy to hear from anyone. It is something that came up as PSRC is kind of evaluating how their boards are made up and what the representation looks like. And then the King County Affordable Housing Committee met and we talked about legislative priorities and our work plan. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Council President. There will be an executive session this evening to discuss pending or potential litigation per RCW 42.30.110(1)(I), and it's expected to take approximately 15 minutes. So as everybody on the east side knows, Salmon Days weekend was a huge success. It was wonderful, and I couldn't be more proud of our town, our community, our volunteers, our chamber, and all of our organizations like the Salmon Bakers at Kiwanis that make this such a fantastic, fantastic event. So it was slightly gloomy weather, but it was still nice to see so many people come together and support our local community. Many, many thanks to the Issaquah Chamber of Commerce and their team for organizing this beloved event, and to all the partners who were involved to make sure this was a successful weekend. There are a couple of upcoming events. There's a Sycamore community meeting on Wednesday, October 8th, where the city is hosting a meeting at Gibson Hall to talk about some upcoming projects happening in the Sycamore neighborhood. We'll give an update since our last meeting we had with this group back in April 2024. We'll share what's new, and we'll talk through the projects that are getting close to construction. We'll also cover what to expect, answer your questions, and highlight environmental stewardship information. There'll be a short presentation and plenty of time for conversation. We're doing this to keep them all in the loop so that they can hear, so that we can hear your thoughts. So please drop by anytime during our open house hours. There is a Talis Residential Association annual meeting on Wednesday, October 8th at Cougar Mountain Middle School at 6 p.m. and city representatives will attend to provide an update on important community topics and be available to answer questions from the residents. The Talis community residents are all encouraged to attend. There is a candidate forum for City Council and Issaquah School Board. Get to know the candidates for City Council and the Issaquah School Board at the upcoming candidate forum hosted by Kiwanis Club of Issaquah and the Issaquah branch of the American Association of University Women. Candidates will answer community-submitted questions and share their perspectives on key issues. The forum continues Wednesday, October 8th at 6:30 p.m. in City Hall South and is open to the public. And if you can't make it in person, you'll be able to watch it live on Channel 21 or on the city's YouTube channel. And the last event is a town hall on climate action, and I'm inviting the community to join me at the Issaquah Library on October 15th for a town hall on climate action. We'll celebrate our community's successes in sustainability and climate action and hear what's coming next in the Climate Action Plan update. You'll have the opportunity to interact with staff and community partners to provide your input on this update and other sustainability initiatives that are happening in our city. The event will be held at the Issaquah Library on October 15th from 6 to 7:30. I hope to see you all there. We are going to move into good of the order, and who has any items? I have a couple of meetings to announce. Council President?
Yeah, I just wanted to second the celebration of Salmon Days. It was truly wonderful, and as I was talking to City Administrator Bobkowitz, the idea that you can look around town today and recognize everything that was here over this weekend is truly, truly remarkable. So a wonderful job not only running a successful Salmon Days event, but also just disappearing it overnight is really quite remarkable. And so I wanted to thank the Chamber for that. Looking ahead into fun activities, the Pumpkin Derby is coming up. This year, Deputy Council President DeMichelle is going to be leading the way on creating our Pumpkin Derby for members of the community. This is a staff event that we utilize to create just a wonderful opportunity to come together. And we take pumpkins, we put them on carts, and we race them down an area, and so the council has our own cart. And I think we've made it down one time.
It's not easy. It's a big ramp.
We have a rocket scientist that we need to get involved in this. Anyway, looking forward to that time. I would love to get anyone involved, so please do contact Barb if that is something you are interested in doing. Thank you.
That's great. I'm just going to add in that Council President and I have been responding to Sound Cities Association about what committees, boards people would like to sit on. There are a couple of vacancies coming up from council members or the mayor that is leaving that are important seats for the city of Issaquah to be sitting in. So there'll probably be some requests for you to consider adding some of these to ones that you currently have, or if you are looking to add some new ones, because we want to make sure we don't lose the footprint that we have in the region, which is pretty strong, probably one of the strongest for any councils in King County, to be honest. We have a pretty good one. Any more good of the order before I go to a couple of meetings? Okay. There's a committee of the whole on Monday, October 13th, and the anticipated agenda items include the north-south traffic study and the 2025-26 mid-biennium budget adjustment. The next regular council meeting is Monday, October 20th. Anticipated agenda items include public hearings on the property tax levy and mid-biennium budget adjustment, the utility rate study, and the Washington State Department of Transportation transfer of development rights, development agreement extension for Bellevue College. And City Administrator, I know we also put out a survey about a potential additional council meeting.
Yes, Madam Mayor, we're asking the council to consider a special meeting on Monday, October 27th, to consider mid-biennium budget issues.
Thank you. So we're waiting to make sure that that is a date that works for everyone, but maybe just we'll throw it out there for now. If there's nothing else under good of the order, I'll go to the executive session. This is ID 1919, pending potential litigation per RCW 42.30.110 I. We're having this session tonight to discuss pending potential litigation. The item is expected to take approximately 15 minutes, and there is no action anticipated to follow an open session. And we are going to enter that executive session at 9:18. Going to ask the city clerk to move the city council and any staff into the separate session.